Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava
Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridharadhari.
Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridharadhari. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtotar Sadashrishimad. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtotar Sadashrishimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyamakun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Yamuna Maya Ki Jai. Ganga Maya Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the Assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the Assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the Assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swamin Iti Namine. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 12, Text 27 and 28. Word for word. Chayayaha Kardamaha Jagye Devahutyaha Patihi Prabhuhu Manasaha Dehataha Cha Idam Jagye Vishva Kritaha Jagat Chayaya Kardamo Jagye Chayaya Kardamo Jagye Devahutya Patif Prabhuhu Devahutya Patif Prabhuhu Manaso Dehataschedam Manaso Dehataschedam Jagye Vishvakrito Jagat Jagye Vishvakrito Jagat Chayaya Kardamo Jagye Devahutya Pratif Prabhuhu Manaso Dehataschedam Jagye Vishvakrito Jagat Chayaya Kardamo Jagye Devahutya Patif Prabhuhu Manaso Dehataschedam Jagye Vishvakrito Jagat Devahutya Patif Prabhuhu Manaso Dehataschedam Jagye Vishvakrito Jagat
Chayaya Kardamo Jagye
Chayaya Kardamo Jagye
Devahutya Patif Prabhu
Devahutya Patif Prabhuhu Manaso Dehataschedam Jagye Vishvakrito Jagat Chayaya Kardamo Jagye Devahutya Patif Prabhuhu Manaso Dehataschedam
Chayaya Kardamo Jagne
Chayaya Kardamo
Devahutya Pati Prabhuhu
Devahutya Patif Prabhuhu
Manaso Dehataschedam
Manaso Dehataschedam
Jagne Vishvakrito
Jagye Vishvakrito
Jagat
Jagat Mataji's Chayaya Kardamo Jagye Devahutya Patif Prabhuhu Manaso Dehataschedam Jagye Vishvakrito Jagat Chayaya by the shadow Kardamaha Kardamamuni Jagye became manifested Devahutyaha of Devahuti Patihi husband Prabhuhu the master Manasaha from the mind Dehataha from the body Cha also Idam this Yagye developed Vishva the universe Kritaha of the creator Jagat cosmic manifestation. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Sage Kardama, husband of the great Devahuti, was manifested from the shadow of Brahma. Thus all became manifested from either the body or the mind of Brahma. Purport. Although one of the three modes of material nature is always prominent, they are never represented unalloyed by one another. Even in the most prominent existence of the two lower qualities, the modes of passion and ignorance, there is sometimes a tinge of the mode of goodness. Therefore, all the sons generated from the body of the mind of Brahma were in the modes of passion and ignorance, but some of them, like Kardama, were born in the mode of goodness. Narada was born in the transcendental state of Brahma. Text 28. Vacham duhitaram tanvim svayambhur haratim manaha akamam chakame kshata sakama iti nakshutam. Translation. O Vidura, we have heard that Brahma had a daughter named Vak, who was born from his body and who attracted his mind towards sex, although she was not sexually inclined towards him. Purport. Balavan indriya gramo vidvam sam api karshati. Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 19, Text 17. It is said that the senses are so mad and strong that they can bewilder even the most sensible and learned man. Therefore it is advised that one should not indulge in living alone, even with one's mother, sister, or daughter. Vidvam sam api karshati means that even the most learned also become victims of the sensuous urge. Maitreya hesitated to state this anomaly on the part of Brahma, who was sexually inclined to his own daughter, but still he mentioned it because sometimes it so happens, and the living example is Brahma himself, although he is the primeval living being and the most learned within the whole universe. If Brahma could be a victim of the sexual urge, then what of others who are prone to so many mundane frailties? This extraordinary immorality on the part of Brahma was heard to have occurred in some particular kalpa, but it could not have happened in the kalpa in which Brahma heard directly from the Lord the 4 essential verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, because the Lord benedicted Brahma after giving him lessons on the Bhagavatam that he would never be bewildered in any kalpa whatsoever. This indicates that before the hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam he might have fallen a victim to such sensuality, but after hearing Srimad Bhagavatam directly from the Lord, there is no possibility of such failures. One should, however, take serious note of this incident. The human being is a social animal, and his unrestricted mixing with the fair sex leads to downfall. Such social freedom of man and women, especially among the younger section, is certainly a great stumbling block on the path of spiritual progress. Material bondage is due only to sexual bondage, and therefore unrestricted association of man and woman is surely a great impediment. Maitreya cited this example on the part of Brahma just to bring to our notice this great danger. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Tarati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utaf Padakamalam Shri Guru and Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swaminiti Namane Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschati Deshatarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivas Adi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Yasadevi Parabhaktir Yatate Vitatagaro Tasyate Katitahirata Prakashante Mahatmana. So Chayaya Kardamo Jagye Devahutya Patif Prabhu Manaso Dehataschedam Jagye Vishvakrito Jagat. Sage Kardama, husband of the great Devahuti, was manifested from the shadow of Brahma. Thus all became manifested from either the body or the mind of Brahma. So we're hearing more about different living entities being manifested from the body or the mind of Brahma. All these different parts of his body, these living entities are coming about. Brahma is creating the universe as well. It's said that he's creating it with the ingredients from the lotus flower. He's using that to actually create the universe, and then these different living entities are coming about from different parts of his body. We saw that nice picture that Koki Prabhu, that painting that Koki Prabhu brought up the other day. I won't bring it up again, but you can look at that and see. It's really nice. It has the details of different parts of Brahma's body. It's got Brahma and then different parts of his body, these different living entities coming out of that. And today, Kardama Muni is mentioned. Of course, we know him, the husband of Devahuti, father of Lord Kapila. And yeah, it's specifically said here, let me just pull this up, that he was manifested and he was in the mode of goodness. And his purport, Prabhupada is speaking about the different modes of nature and how there's not any scenario where one who is under the clutches of material nature is solely under the influence of one of those modes, but rather they are under the influence of a mix of the three. And so one may be more prominent than the others, but ultimately there's always a mix. It's also said in Bhagavad Gita here. Where is this? Where 14? If you pull up the 14th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, text 10. Rajas tamas chabhi bhuya sattvam bhavati bharata raja sattvam tamas chaiva tamas sattvam rajas tata. Sometimes the mode of goodness becomes prominent, defeating the modes of passion and ignorance, O son of Bharat. Sometimes the mode of passion defeats goodness and ignorance, and at other times ignorance defeats goodness and passion. In this way, there's always competition for supremacy. So we see this, that these three modes of material nature are always competing for prominence and dominating, you could say, the living entity. And again, Prabhupada is explaining here that most of, or he says, all the sons generated from the body or mind of Brahma were in the modes of passion and ignorance. But some of them, like Karnama, who was born in the mode of goodness, then there's, of course, Narada, who was born in the, it says, transcendental state of Brahma. So he was born in the state of unalloyed goodness, pure devotee, untainted by the modes of material nature. And of course, we read that Narada was born from the best deliberation of Brahma, which then I think Kolki Prabhu mentioned that it's mentioned elsewhere, maybe in the commentaries of the Acharyas, that means specifically that from Brahma's devotional service that Narada Muni came about. So therefore he was untainted, untinged by these modes of material nature. And then Kardama was born into the mode of goodness, and all the other sons were in the mode of passion and ignorance, which is kind of interesting because you would think there's some of the, extremely elevated souls, some of the first living entities in the universe. They've given the task of populating the universe. You'd think that they'd be mainly in the mode of goodness. I would think that, but here it's saying that they're in the mode of passion, ignorance. They need to be in the mode of passion to carry out that task of populating the universe. We saw with the four Kumaras that because they weren't in that mode of passion, they were renounced from the world and they didn't want to do that. So Brahma had to create some entities that were in that, mode of passion to carry out that population of the universe. And so, like that, there wasn't so much to cover in this purport. I mean, others could speak more on it, but I'm going to move on to the next one. So 3:12:28, and we'll just read the translation again. O Vidura, we have heard that Brahma had a daughter named Vak who was born from his body and who attracted his mind towards sex, although she was not sexually inclined towards him. So, this is, again, quite famous pastime and story from the Bhagavatam. This was mentioned briefly, again, the other day when Kolkibu was giving class, because in that painting, you see all the different living entities coming from Brahma, and then you see a deer. And we were like, oh, what is that? And then we kind of like, oh yeah, it must be that his daughter, because his daughter came in the form of a deer, a hind, I think it's called, a female deer. And then Brahma took on the form of a stag, it said, to chase after her because he was attracted. And so this is quite a bewildering, or you could say surprising, shocking, quite, shocking occurrence in the Bhagavatam here. We're talking about understanding that Brahma is the most elevated soul in the universe. He is the original living being within the universe. He's directly taken instruction from Krishna himself on how to go about the creation, and he's undergone all these penances, 1,000 years was it, of penances that he was just completely alone. And then he's gone through so much, like we've seen, he's created these, the 4 Kumaras, and then they didn't want to, go out, do their duty, and then he created, from that, he became angry, and Rudra came about, and then Rudra started, creating offspring, and then they were about to destroy the whole universe. It was a very stressful situation. So Brahma, and he's been tasked with such a momentous task, such a gargantuan task to create this secondary creation and populate the universe and such. So he's a very, very elevated soul, and yet we see something happening here which is, again, shocking and can be bewildering even to see. Well, he created a daughter, and then he became sexually attracted to her. So it seems like, whoa, this is just so far out, even within, you take society nowadays, very degraded place, meat eating, women hunting, just everything. We understand, we've talked about it enough times to see the state of society now, but if you were to talk about somebody being attracted sexually to their daughter in this society, it would still be seen as such an abominable, the lowest thing, just, actually this said, I've heard this, in prisons, right, everyone's in prison as a criminal. Many of them have done really bad things, violent criminals and such, but specifically if someone is a child molester, they are treated as the lowest of the land. They have to be isolated from the rest of the regular population, because even those that have committed rape and murder and stuff, even they recognize that the child molester is just so low, so much lower than even them, that they'll literally kill them just because of what they've done. But then what to speak of, that's definitely really low, but it seems even lower, at least in my mind, that to be attracted to your own daughter in that way, that it's your own offspring, so it's even more degraded, you can say, even more low to be attracted in that way. And we see here, right after this, I'm not going to spoil the rest of the chapter, but that the sons of Brahma actually kind of intervened and said, this is text 30, I'll just read it real quick. "O Father, this performance in which you are endeavoring to complicate yourself," speaking about that his being attracted to his daughter, "was never attempted by any other Brahma, nor by anyone else, nor by you in previous kalpas, nor will anyone dare to attempt it in the future. You are the supreme being in the universe. So how is it that you want to have sex with your daughter and cannot control your desire?" So again, this is, like I said, a very shocking thing, very, it seems like a very low-class activity to be attracted in that way. And it's even said in the purport that Maitreya hesitated to state this anomaly on the part of Brahma, who was sexually inclined to his own daughter, but still he mentioned it because sometimes it so happens, and the living example is Brahma himself. So Maitreya is narrating this as it's happening, and he even hesitated to even bring this up because it's not a pleasant thing to hear about, and it's not, it doesn't reflect very nicely on Lord Brahma that this happened. But we understand, of course, that ultimately this is meant to give an example to the conditioned souls like ourselves, and to give us the understanding that, well, if someone like Brahma could undergo such a thing, then we certainly should be very careful in our dealings with the opposite sex. And our general attitude, at least myself, in being raised in the West, is to be very relaxed in such things, and especially in relations with the opposite sex and dealings with them. And from a very young age, we're just meant to associate, allowed to mix freely with the opposite sex, in school, and so it's just constantly there. And we understand that traditionally, the brahmacharis and the gurukul, they actually, other than perhaps the wife of the guru, they didn't even really have any interaction with any, of the opposite sex, especially not with any of the younger, their age, or any young women, right? So the young brahmacharis, they would go through life, from a young age 5 to 25, being trained in this understanding that actually this sex attraction is the root of our material entanglement. And this is what is the strongest binding force in the material world. And it's actually the cause of your suffering. And although it seems very attractive, it seems very nice, you must understand from a intellectual standpoint and using your intelligence and understanding Shastra, and stories such as this with Brahma, that this is not at all a good thing. It's actually quite opposite. It seems like nectar in the beginning, but then it becomes poison in the end. And so, like I said, that culture was there, and that is the proper, culture of Varnashram Dharma, that this is integrated into society where young men are not even given the opportunity to fall victim to this. Generally, even it's said that if the wife of the guru is young, then the brahmacharis are restricted. They're forbidden from even associating with her, because generally, maybe the guru and the wife of the guru are a little older, and then the brahmacharis will engage in various services for the guru and his wife and just kind of serve them. So that's okay. But then if the wife is younger, then again the brahmacharis are restricted. They're forbidden from even associating with her. So in this way, there's 20 years of no association with the opposite sex, and strict and thorough training and understanding, philosophical foundations given, and the understanding that this is the strongest binding force in the material world, and this will lead to spiritual fall down. This is what will deviate you from the proper path of devotional service and elevation to, ultimately going back to Godhead. This is what's going to keep you from that. Out of all the different, attractions in this world, wealth, becoming very strong, becoming very famous, all these things, actually all of that is centered around our sex desire and sex attraction. But this sex attraction is the strongest of all of them. And so, like I said, Brahma is going through this pastime, and ultimately it's meant to give us the example. Just like there's so many examples in the Bhagavatam of great devotees, great souls, great rishis, yogis, etc., that were fell victim to this sex desire. There's Sobhari Muni, who was the one who was meditating underwater. I don't know was it for years, probably, something like that. And then simply he saw fish copulating, and he immediately began thinking of sex life, and he left the water and he went and, engaged in sex life. And so simply from such nobody would ever think that seeing fish copulating would make them, attracted to sex life. But the senses are so strong, of course, that it's saying right here in the purport, it is said that the senses are so mad and strong that they can bewilder even the most sensible and learned man. So even if we are on the level of Brahma, which we're not even close, we can still become bewildered by our senses. And of course we understand that engaging in devotional service is the way to control our senses, and Krishna is Rishikesh, he's the master of the senses, and by surrendering ourselves to him, we can, pray, please Krishna, take control of my senses and, engage them in your service. And in such a way he can do that. But on our own power, we're completely powerless against the, nearly almighty strength, you could say, of Maya, the insurmountable strength of Maya. She's the most powerful force in this universe, and this sex attraction is what, again, binds us like anything. Then there's Ajamil, another example, of course, very famous. He was, a Brahmin, living very, nice life, married, everything like that. And simply by seeing a prostitute embracing a low-class man on the street, he became bewildered and he became attracted, and then it led to him basically deviating from devotional service for the rest of his life until very, very old age, till his deathbed. And then he, was redeemed by, chanting Narayan, which he was referring to his son, but anyways, that is there as another example of the danger of sex attraction, sex desire, and how it can deviate us from the path of devotional service. Vishwamitra Muni, of course, and then Indra was seeing that Vishwamitra Muni was making so much advancement, and he was threatening his position, essentially. And so he sent Menaka, which is a heavenly, Apsara, celestial beauty, to distract him, and then he became attracted and distracted, and many years passed by where he was enjoying with her, and he forgot about his spiritual life. Same with, was it Rishyasringa, this boy who, I don't remember his name of his father, but his father basically raised him in the forest away from where he had never even seen a woman. He didn't even know what a woman was. And then, it was a pastime. I don't know all the details off the top of my head, but there was a king and there was no rain or something, like there was some problem in his kingdom, and he heard that, if I get this Rishyasringa into my kingdom, then everything it'll get better. So then he hatched a plan. He sent beautiful women to go take him, and he became attracted again. But he didn't even know what a woman was, but still, of course, that attraction is inherent there. Because we're in the material world, even if we have never had any experience of the opposite sex, still we'll become attracted. Just the way Maya works is that we become very bewildered and attracted to the form of a woman specifically. And for a woman, it's the form of a man. For a man, it's the form of a woman. And one thing that, this is kind of a side point, but I guess also relates. One thing I really like to kind of meditate upon in this regard that helps me is that when we talk about how the he-pig is attracted to the she-pig, and the he-goat's attracted to the she-goat, and the fish, male fish to the female fish. These things are, for us, like, a pig is quite abominable of a thing, but to imagine having that same, we've all experienced sexual attraction. To imagine that, being in the body of a pig and being attracted to the body of a female pig is so, it really gives you perspective of our position, because we're not that much different, it says somewhere else here that, the human is a social animal. We're just animals, and what the body actually is, it's actually not attractive at all when you really think about it. And these are all things that are never even considered by the Western mind and Western culture at all. That actually, wait, it's not that attractive. Sex is actually not that attractive at all when you really think about what it is. And this body, what is this body made of? Blood, pus, stool, urine, bones, and there's organs, and it's quite unattractive actually when you really, really think about it. But still, that bewilderment comes. The glance of a woman, or the just every aspect of the opposite sex can attract us actually. So it's quite something quite amazing actually when you think about the power of Krishna's Maya, he's able to create such a thing. And so this is why, again, talking about the state of the Western mind, the Western understanding of these things is non-existent at all. There's no concept of sexual indulgence leading to material entanglement. There's no even conception of what material entanglement is, or that we're stuck in this cycle of birth and death. They don't even have the most basic understanding that we're not the body, these kinds of things. But when we come into Krishna consciousness and we begin learning about these things, it can be quite a shock. It can be quite a culture shock, and many people, including myself, find themselves being extremely repulsed or unattracted to such things. I remember when I very first found out about Krishna consciousness, I was in Denver, and I got a Bhagavad Gita online, and then I found out about the temple. I went to the temple, and I met some brahmacharis, and I was associating with them, and then I had a girlfriend at the time, and I was going with one of my friends, my guy friends, to the temple, and then on one Sunday feast, I brought my girlfriend and my friend, and we were sitting there, taking the feast, and this one brahmachari walked up and he just handed me a brahmachari book, Brahmachari and Krishna Consciousness. He didn't say anything, he just handed it to me and walked away. And I was like, okay, what is this? And I looked, I was like, okay. So we went home, and I remember it was me, my friend, and my girlfriend. We were just sitting there in my room, and like, what is this book? We started reading it, and it's saying, of course, anybody who's read that book, sex desire is the most, abominable thing. It is talking about how this is binding us to the material world. This is like our worst enemy. This causes all suffering. It's the cause of extreme suffering. And I just remember saying, nope, no, not for me. I'm good. And I just threw that to the side. I actually gave it to my friend, and he started reading it. I was like, no, I'm good. I don't need that. So immediately the Western mind, the conditioned mind of as being in Western bodies seems to be very common. That is the response. And actually, in my mind, I was kind of like, well, maybe I should consider this celibacy thing. This is interesting. And then I was like, nah, it's not worth it. So we see the power of, again, this association with the opposite sex, what it can do to us. Because actually, I remember right before that, when I had first found out about Krishna consciousness and stuff, I didn't have a girlfriend. And then I met this girl. This is all within a month. I found out about Krishna consciousness. I was interested in it. I was like, I should be serious about spiritual life. And then I met this girl, and this incident that I just said happened, and I just completely kind of forgot. You just become covered over, and you just forget. And I mean, everything that's being said in the Bhagavatam, you can see it so clearly in your own life if you've ever gone through things like that. And then the really crazy thing is, anyways, I'm kind of telling some of my personal stuff, but after this was, I was with this girl for years, and then after that, we broke up, and then I was like, okay, now it's time to be serious about spiritual life. I know, that's the way. I'm not happy in this material thing. These things are temporary. I'm seeing the temporality of, material nature and all this. And I'm okay. The spiritual thing, that's the real thing. I understand that. I should pursue that. And so I was, reading these Mayavad books and these kind of things, and understanding some things about what is sadhana, the importance of waking up early, Brahma Muhurta, and these books were saying, chant Maha Mantra. So I was chanting Hare Krishna. I had Japamala and everything. And so literally I was waking up. There was about 2-month period where I was waking up every morning at 4:30. The book that I was reading said 4:30. So I was waking up at 4:30, and it said to chant 10 rounds. So I would chant 10 rounds. And then it also said, this is kind of funny, it said to write the mantra. So I had a notebook, and I would just sit there for 20 minutes. And I would write Hare Krishna, write the mantra over and over. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I would just read some of these books, and I would do basically a morning program kind of thing on my own. I just self-motivated to do it. And I immediately was like, oh, this is the real thing. I noticed a difference. I was feeling much happier. I gave up all my bad habits, intoxication, and all these kinds of things. And then it happened again to me. I met some other girl, and then I was okay. I told her, okay, I wake up at 4:30. I'm just gonna do this. Let me do my thing with this, whatever. I'll hang out with you later, whatever. And I kept that up for a week or two, and then I just forgot about it again. The mind gets carried away, and the lure of this material enjoyment becomes so attractive, and all intelligence gets lost. The reason you're doing everything, the reason you're engaging in sadhana, all that just gets completely forgotten. It's really amazing. And so I was just kind of reflecting on that. And I was even thinking, those were kind of the 2 times that would happen to me where I was striving for spiritual advancement. But you see it even in terms of material, if you're trying to make material advancement, and you're doing something, working on something, some business or whatever it is, and then you meet some girl, and it just, again, you get distracted, you get sidetracked from the goal that you have in your life. And because the senses are just so strongly pulling you towards that, it's so attractive to the conditioned soul, that we just forget, we lose all intelligence, we forget everything. So the real intelligent thing to do, especially someone like, we got Parth here, young boy, hasn't been entangled with women, hopefully yet, I don't think. So the real intelligent thing to do is learn from someone like me and don't get involved in that. And really, especially that age you're at, when you're like 15 to like 25 or whatever, and like college and all that, it's like really dangerous time for that, because again, the mixing, the free mixing becomes more, and then in college, there's no restriction, there's no parents anymore, and it's just, you're kind of let loose to do whatever you want. So you have to be very, very, very careful, and you should use some intelligence and learn from others' mistakes, and you can learn from the mistakes of, so-called mistakes of like Brahma, where he's given this example here in this verse, and other great personalities in the Bhagavatam. I wanted to read a little bit, because there's some really, really, amazing things in the Bhagavatam in this regard. If you pull up Canto 3, chapter 31, and you can go to the index down to text 32. This is Lord Kapila speaking to Devahuti. So I'm just going to read a bunch of the translations. So, if therefore the living entity again associates with the path of unrighteousness, influenced by sensually minded people, it's okay. 32, yeah. If therefore the living entity again associates with the path of unrighteousness, influenced by sensually minded people engaged in the pursuit of sexual enjoyment and the gratification of the palate, he again goes to hell as before. He becomes devoid of truthfulness, cleanliness, mercy, gravity, spiritual intelligence, shyness, austerity, fame, forgiveness, control of the mind, control of the senses, fortune, and all such opportunities. One should not associate with a coarse fool who is bereft of the knowledge of self-realization and who is no more than a dancing dog in the hands of a woman. The infatuation and bondage which accrue to a man from attachment to any other object is not as complete as that resulting from attachment to a woman or to the fellowship of men who are fond of women. At the sight of his own daughter, Brahma was bewildered by her charms and shamelessly ran up to her in the form of a stag when she took the form of a hind. Amongst all kinds of living entities begotten by Brahma, namely men, demigods, and animals, none but the sage Narayan is immune to the attraction of Maya in the form of woman. Just try to understand the mighty strength of my Maya in the shape of woman, who by the mere movement of her eyebrows can keep even the greatest conquerors of the world under her grip. One who aspires to reach the culmination of yoga and has realized his self by rendering service unto me should never associate with an attractive woman, for such a woman is declared in the scripture to be the gateway to hell for the advancing devotee. The woman created by the Lord is the representation of Maya, and one who associates with such Maya by accepting services must certainly know that this is the way of death, just like a blind well covered with grass. A living entity who, as a result of attachment to a woman in his previous life, has been endowed with the form of a woman, foolishly looks upon Maya in the form of a man, her husband, as the bestower of wealth, progeny, house, and other material assets. A woman therefore should consider her husband, her house, and her children to be the arrangement of the external energy of the Lord for her death, just as the sweet singing of the hunter is death for the deer. So, even there it's nice because it gives the flip side, which is, the Shastra is generally written for the male perspective. Specifically, the male human form of life is meant for ultimate perfection, self-realization. But, of course, women are also able to do it as well, no problem. And the flip side is given here that, for a man, woman is Maya, but for a woman, man is Maya, and her husband and her children, all these things. This is pretty heavy. I mean, she should consider her husband, her house, and her children to be the arrangement of the external energy of the Lord for her death. Very heavy stuff. So this attraction, and of course, from sexual attraction comes, how was it? Griha, Kshetra, house, children. I don't know the verse, but all these things come about, right? All these things expand from this one thing of sexual attraction. Then you have to have a house, then you have to have work, then you have to have children, then you have to have, Now, in modern days, you have to have a car, you have to have a mortgage, you have to have all these things, your 401k, and it just expands and expands and expands, and all these things are just ropes that are binding the living entity and basically keeping us from the spiritual goal of life. And it's very heavy here, this beginning here, that one should not associate with a coarse fool who is bereft of knowledge of self-realization and who is no more than a dancing dog in the hands of a woman. So it's said that, the transcendentalist or devotee who's aspiring for self-realization shouldn't associate with beautiful women, and they also shouldn't associate with men who are too fond of beautiful women, because that same, it's basically the same principle, that you will develop that same attraction that's there in that, foolish man. You'll take on that same quality if you're around such a person. And it's very, very difficult. We were talking with this, what is his name? I can't remember this. The trainer, what's his name? Ash, yeah. We were talking with him about this a little bit, because he was speaking of how when he was younger, he was kind of he got into some trouble. He was, a little bit of angry kid, and he ended up being sent, his mom sent him to India to live in a boarding school for Sikhs. A Sikh boarding school, and they would go and practice, and he said they would practice sadhana, and they would chant mantras and things like that. And being, in India, and I don't know exactly where he was, but it sounded like he was in a place that was kind of isolated more and a little bit more traditional. And that he said when he came back to America, it was so shocking, the culture shock, and for him seeing billboards with, half-naked women and all, just the material enjoyment, the atmosphere of material enjoyment here in the West, he was completely shocked. I mean, he grew up in it, but then he left for a long enough time, it was 5 years, 4 or 5 years, that he was gone. And so when he came back, it was completely shocking. And then we were talking about how, I was thinking, well, yeah, that must be crazy. And also it's pretty crazy even just being here, because we have this little kind of bubble. It's like a 3-acre bubble basically. But as soon as we go out anywhere, go to the Walmart or go on TSKB or something, we immediately are back in touch with that extremely materialistic society. And anyways, my service is pretty crazy because I'm constantly in touch with it here. I have to be on this thing all the time, seeing all this crazy stuff. So it's not really that I'm in this nice bubble here. But when you're in the temple doing this nice temple services, cooking and stuff, you get to okay, you kind of forget about the outside world a little bit. But I was just saying how it's kind of a really weird contradiction or contrast that happens for us, because we're trying to be renunciates, but we're literally in the middle of the most indulgent, sense gratificatory, hedonistic society, maybe in history, at least recent history, that so much degradation, so much sense gratification, just illicit sex is just normal, just all these. I mean, all the 4 sinful activities are basically the life and soul of all the living entities here. That's what gives them, purpose in life, is to basically break the 4 regular principles. So we're behind enemy lines, you could say. So there's a very interesting contrast there. But anyways, I've kind of gone on quite long. There's only 5 minutes left. If there's any comments or questions about any of that, please feel free to ask. Yes, Prabhu.
Interesting point you're making now. The mind's tendency is to always try to see how it can enjoy that sex desire. So there's that saying, you give it an inch, they take a mile. So that's the mind's tendency. So especially those who want to remain renunciates throughout their lives, there has to be a level of determination that, because even when you come into devotional service, there is room for that sex desire, and the sanction is given. But still, Shastra says you shouldn't. Better, if you're intelligent, better you don't do it. If you're smart, if you're, what is that? Urvasi, she's saying, Urvasi? She's saying that, you're a hero, O king. I was reading that last time. You're a hero now, but you're becoming overcome by a woman. So one should see that if he's actually intelligent, that he doesn't want to waste time, because that inch that's given, you're going to have that sex life within family life and it's cool and it's there, that room is given, but for one who's really serious, he should think, it's another trap for me to just wait. I can lose it. I've already lost it so many times, especially like for yourself. You've had, experience, and some of us don't have that experience. We're lucky, in some sense, in good sense. So hopefully we learn by first-class intelligence. Yeah. But the point is that you see an inch, and even we've seen so many times in my own life of my friends and my own family, they associated with the opposite sex and just ruined their life, and like God, So similarly, there is so much time to be wasted in the human form of life by the opposite sex, and that being the most valuable thing in our life. We don't know when we're going to get this opportunity again, whether in this life or next life, to be really able to give ourselves fully to Guru and Krishna, fully like this. So it's always important to remember that. And if one can, and the most important aspect of that whole thing is that the renunciate, if he is the real renunciate, learns how to remain satisfied amongst frustrating situations. And you can see that here. We can say, if we analyze Brahma's situation, even from the beginning, he's getting fried out, the sons and this and that, and you'll see that frustration leads to, we see that verse that comes in the Bhagavad Gita, from contemplation, from contemplation there is attachment, from attachment lust arising, from lust there's anger, from anger one begins his fall down, more or less. So one has to learn the art of becoming satisfied in devotional service in all circumstances, and how to do that. And Brahma does that. He does that by remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then there's that nice verse, Stane Stita, I forget the verse here. That Stane Stita Shrutigatam Tanuvan Mano Bhirya Prayasha Jito Pi Asitresti Lokyam. This is in the 11th canto, 10:14:3, in which I believe this is Lord Brahma, maybe. This is Lord Brahma. He's speaking, he's saying that those who, even while remaining situated in the established social positions, throw away the process of speculative knowledge, and with their body, words, and mind offer all respects to descriptions of your personality and activities, dedicating their lives to these narrations, which are vibrated by you personally and your pure devotees, certainly conquered the lordship, although you are unconquerable, otherwise unconquerable by anyone within the three worlds. And I don't remember if Srila Prabhupada still writes in here. Where does Prabhupada's purport go up to?
Is that the last one or the first one, his disciples?
Himself as the first one. His first one.
Yeah, I can't remember which particular place he stops, but in one of these areas here, Prabhupada mentions that one simply, if he just hears Krishna consciousness, that it is enough. If he can't do anything else, and he can just hear about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is enough. For us, generally in Kali Yuga, we got to do something. I got to do something, but we got to learn also the art of remaining satisfied in Krishna consciousness by hearing, chanting. It's really tough, but a real renunciate can do that. He knows when there's a situation he can't control, and chant, read, cook for Krishna, be happy, don't be frustrated, don't do anything stupid, bro. Just wait, Krishna will give me the right time to do what I need to do. And so when we develop that experience and that grit to stay, and then we can always remember what is important. So it's just, this Brahma situation is like that. There was a little, you can see sometimes he got, there's pressure builds.
Yeah.
And then there's a little bit of, of course it's a pastime, but we can analyze it.
Yeah.
7:31. If anybody has any other questions.
Any other quick questions or anything? Mataji's? Oh, okay. Oh.
Yeah, you can see that's the, what is this verse, that the human form of life? Labda Sudurlabham, that explains it all. That the human form of life is attained, one should not waste a single moment. And then there's Sumedasa, so many places that that is given, that one who has sharp intelligence, he doesn't indulge. I mean, it's also naturally understood, one who has sharp intelligence, he naturally doesn't indulge in those things that are unnecessary. And so, Nate Swarta Gatim Hi Vishnum, by Artha Hi Manina, he doesn't engage in that which is external. So he doesn't, so one who is really sharp in his intelligence, he naturally steers away from that.
It says right here, one who aspires to reach the culmination of yoga and has reached his self and has realized his self by rendering service unto me should never associate with attractive women, for such a woman is declared in the scripture to be the gateway to hell for the advancing devotee. Yeah. That's 3:31:39.
That's why the renunciates are looked at upon the society at a higher esteem. They're considered the most intelligent. Why? Because they conquer sex desire. That means they're sharp. Sumeda, the Shastra uses that word, Sumeda, very sharp intelligence. Why? Because they're able to distinguish between what is reality, what is illusion, and they are able to give that knowledge for the welfare of human society. So one who's really intelligent, he avoids a women's association. Why? Because this factor here. So yeah, there's so many other quotes in Shastra pointing towards this. That better to avoid it. Better to avoid it. Avoid it. It's hard, there's no doubt, we're not free of it. We're speaking ideal. When we come to who we are, then that's a different level, where we're at. Yeah. But ideal what Shastra is speaking, this is it. One should not, one should see, one should learn. Okay, what is the standard? And then we see great personalities who understand it, okay. All right, then that respect has to be given. Oh, okay, this is a renunciate. He's done it his whole life. Wow, okay. Yeah. So many places there that the sharp intelligence means that detached, that's all.
Okay. Matri has one.
But would it be fair to say that, someone who's, I guess, mature enough spiritually to see where they are, to analyze where they are, and it just seems like if somebody was able to, see that maybe I cannot, be a renunciate my life, I should do what's safer for my spiritual life, it seems like that is pretty intelligent, am I wrong?
Yeah, that's definitely there. One has to understand where they are and act accordingly in that way. Like you'll see, most brahmacharis do. It's very rare that someone is able to remain renunciate and celibate their entire life. So yeah, one has to use proper discrimination. Also take guidance from seniors that kind of observe them and understand where they're at and can kind of see how they are. But yeah, it's kind of, one should have one should sincerely endeavor, right, to attain the ideal, to attain that, this ideal of renunciation. And of course there's nothing wrong, there's nothing adharmic about entering household life and such, and one can continue practicing Krishna consciousness in that way. But again, as Chandan was saying, we're speaking of the kind of the ideal, what is the topmost thing, and it's understood that getting entangled in household life is an impediment to spiritual advancement and self-realization. So, but yeah, one has to act intelligently in that way. You're definitely right. Okay. Yes, Matari, one more thing.
From the other quotes that we've cited throughout the class, that could seem correct. I just know that one class, I believe that Guru Maharaj gives, it's titled that, he makes the point of, he's reading from Prabhupada's books, where Prabhupada says advancement for householders can be almost nil. Mm-hmm. And so Guru Maharaj gives actually an entire class where he's talking about that's not necessarily the case. So that's, for some people actually, like individuals that Dirga was quoting, it can actually be a benefit to their spiritual life, rather than if they were to stay in a different ashram, that could actually be an impediment to their spiritual life.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. If one is very much struggling and can't handle, the renunciate order, then it's definitely better to get into a situation where they can practice nicely and continue on. Yeah, one more thing.
So yeah, like you were saying, it is important for each and every devotee to examine himself and where he's at. That's why I said we're speaking the ideal. But like you made a good point at the end here, that the devotee recognizes he's not on that platform, that he's not on that level of realization, or has the first class intelligence that Srila Prabhupada speaks about. So that has to be distinguished. That I don't have first class intelligence. But the renunciates who are able to do it, they have it. So it's very important to distinguish. It's not that it's like bashing, you're not. That's offensive if one just bashes the grihastas. That becomes offensive because they're devotees. They work hard. They serve Krishna. They love Krishna. No, it's not a question of you're lower or higher. Now you're just like a scum. That's, again, we had that in Prabhupada's time, and that's completely wrong. But at the same time, there's a very clear distinction given to the renunciates. So it's important to kind of have that understanding. Yes, the devotee who recognizes his position and he takes the position of Grihastha, he's also intelligent. Because he recognizes he's not that intelligent to be able to go on in his Krishna consciousness properly, and he's intelligent enough to go, this is how I should serve Guru, and this is my path. Ultimately to what? To come to the position of renunciation.
Right.
That's the whole point.
That's the point. Household life is a temporary thing.
I have to,
you're meant
he realizes,
to take
I have to go to this household life, which is technically unnecessary, but for me it's necessary, and not to come to the position that I'm already at.
Yeah.
So
you have to give it up either.
Yeah, you have to give it up, but he realizes I have to develop that intelligence. So that's the difference. So one has to, there's a very clear point there. That it's not it's a position, it's like the highway is there, you're in the renounced order of life, you're on the highway back home, back to Godhead. Guru Maharaj said it's a pressure cooker by which you get cooked fast for Krishna and you can be offered to Krishna. But if you can't remain in there, you go to the bottom, you're going to get burnt. So it's like a household life, like on-ramp, I got to get back on the highway. But at the same time, Srila Prabhupada gives, you can make steady advancement in Grihastha life also. You can go on, especially devotees who are full-time and, serving. So there's different, of course, and even to an extent where Srila Prabhupada's householders at one point were doing more than any of the brahmacharis and sannyasis. So it's not exactly black and white also. Sometimes the householders, in Srila Prabhupada's times, the householders were renounced, just like the brahmacharis, and there was no difference. They were living like sannyas, practically living, just traveling, not owning anything, and going and engaging in preaching, open a center, just drop everything and open a center, just, it's like practically the same as the renounced order of life. So Krishna consciousness has that level, but there's distinction. There is distinction. It's not all the same. And the renunciate's duty is to remind that to the grihastas, remind that to those who are in that order of life. Otherwise we forget. That's why renunciates are required to be heavy. We hear some of Guru Maharaj's classes, the one that came out.
That recent one about marriage advice?
Athens, and
the marriage advice one.
What is that called?
It's like about marriage advice? Right?
Yeah, it's about marriage
for
advice.
Young men?
And he says young men should not get married.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. Just don't do it. And then he gives all the reasons why not to do it. So renunciates are there to remind us, hey, you have to give it up, you have to give it up, you have to give it up. Otherwise we'll just build a life around ourselves. Well, it's all fine, everything's wonderful, everything's nice, because household life can be like that if one does it properly. And we have experience from that, from traditional culture, which is so, it's well maintained. There is Maya there. In American culture, in modern culture, it's not there. There's a suffering. But in traditional culture, there is a level of happiness in worldly happiness in family life. So renunciates are required, and all of these heavy statements are true, are real. There's nothing, It's not, there's no side thing to it. So it needs to be emphasized by the renunciates. They hammered that on.
Okay. All right. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vanchakapatubhyascha kripasinvivcha patitanam